So we're up to clipping, which is going to require a little bit of an explanation if you've never clipped in any programs before. So I'm drawing out my text box, pasting my text in here. I do a Command A to select all of it, then format it the same as the other text. So there's our text, and this clipping would work the same whether this was a photographic image, a rectangle that we drew in here. So I haven't evoked the clipping yet. Let me close up some of these. So you can see here's clip right here. You can also make a clip right here. So here's how clipping works just in general. I'm going to take the clip tool. As soon as we click on this, you can see that the display changes here and the bounding box around it changes. So clipping means that you now have the ability to clip part of what is selected. And in this program, the default is that it's all visible. But as soon as I make this green selection area, and your color may vary, a different size, then that's what becomes visible. So there is a little bit of a weirdness in just the name clipping. It's actually what you're doing is revealing. So keep that in mind, and that's how it works in most programs, is the box that you actually draw, which I'm circling here, is what's revealed. And then the rest of it is what is clipped. We can also see the properties of what I drew with the clipping tool under here, under clip. And let me even close more of this up here. Okay. So this is showing you, well, just watch and you'll see that the corner is at 0, 0 of that object itself. So that represents this corner. Watch what happens if I change this number. As I make it bigger, more of the clip is revealed from left to right. And if I make this number bigger, more is revealed down there. So I would think for a lot of people, you're like, okay, now I understand how to animate from here. And keep in mind, just like most properties in Adobe Edge Animate, you can make static adjustments. Like for example, if we only wanted this much of a photograph to show up, then we're done. You know, we can just go ahead, select away, and from there on, that's all that shows. But in the example animation that I set up for you, we had where all of this shows, and then we start animating what shows. So let's go back, either using the properties, or probably a little more intuitive would be to go back here, select the clipping tool, and let's adjust this so that all of it shows for 1 second. So we have it there at 113, I believe it was. Let's go to the display, change it to on so it doesn't show up before then. Shows up now for 1 second, all the entire area, and then we can go to the clip, click on the add keyframe. Let's do a little house cleaning here so we know what we're working with. We'll rename this clipping, and there you can see there's our display on and our first clip. So we're going to go out 1 second here. We're going to add another keyframe for the clip property, and then because we have the auto transition on, whatever change I make on the second keyframe is going to be an animation from the first to the second. And I believe we had about 25% of this showing here. And then let's just scrub that playhead and see if that's what's happening. So we see all of it for a second, starts to just show us a little bit there. Then we can go out another second, insert another keyframe, and then it went something like this. There's our next auto transition. Go over another second. At 117, we're going to insert our next keyframe. And then it went to where we saw just part of the first word. To just grabbing a little more space here by dragging too far and then dragging back. And then at 118, we saw all of it, so I inserted another keyframe. There's my last transition in that sequence, and then that stayed on for a total of another second, and then we just can come up here and change the display to off. And remember, it helps to label your layers for me when I come around to troubleshoot, but not only that, it is a requirement for this project. So for this next section, we have this just explanation text here, so I'll call that corners explained, and then go ahead and at the same time select that, toggle its visibility, and then I believe that just showed up for 2 seconds, and then in came the square. So we're going to grab the rectangle tool and a perfect square. Hold down the shift tool when you're trying to make that. Actually, I'm going to click from the bottom up when I do this so that I do actually get a square. It seemed to not want to work when it was inside the text box. And then let's change the color of that to our red. Okay, and then this is just a matter of opening up this corners palette. And before we set a keyframe, we'll just move on 1 second. Well, in fact, before we even do that, let's, with this selected, select its visibility to on, so it only shows up there. Let's go over a second, and then let's insert the keyframe for the corners. Now, when you have one selected here, it means that you have one setting for all 4 corners. If you select 4, it lets you change each corner independently, and if you select 8, it lets you change the top half of the corner different from the edge. So in other words, you can change 1/2 of each corner with this number, the other half with this number, and so on and so on. If that doesn't make sense to you, just experiment with it and it will. But since we're changing equally, all we need is the 1 here. Now we can change in pixels until it looks right, but when you're trying to make a change that is more visual than mathematical, changing this over to percentage works quite well. So notice that we have a block for each 4 corners, so that again is a hint letting you know that you have independent control over your corners. I'm going to go out a second, click the keyframe again, and then I'm going to change this, and I just know this from experimenting that I need to up this to 50%, and that's going to round the corner. So here we have the rectangle, well, square in this case, showing up for a second, animating, and then I believe that just shows up for another second, and then we'll toggle the visibility to off. Then once again we have a block of explanatory type and an object being rotated, and you can see I rounded one part of this off statically so that you could indeed tell that it was only spinning around one time, because when you drag like this with the rectangle, you might assume there that it's spun all the way around, right? If you just look at it quick, you're like, yep, that went all the way around. But look closer, In fact, I'll make it even more obvious here. I'll select it and then just pay attention to this little plus thing here. You can see that that's only gone 180 degrees, and now it's gone the full 360. So that's all we did, was animate the rotate value for that. And recall that the rotate is under the transform options. And then what's pretty interesting is by default, whenever you draw an object in the program, its origin is in the very center, center left to right, center top to bottom. So that's what it's spinning around. If you imagined a piece of paper on the wall and you stuck a tack right here and spun it around, it's going to spin just like you're seeing there. But now here, I change the origin, to over here. You can see that little blue dot right here, and I changed it using these features, and I just did that as a static, just right here, made the change, static, there's no transition, and then I went ahead and spun it again. So I did the next rotation from 360 to 720. Remember, each rotation is 360. So each time you want to go around another time, it would just be a matter of adding another 360 to this number. But you can see that that makes for a whole different rotation. And then we're going to do something bizarre here. We're going to rotate an object around, but at the same time we're rotating it around, we're rotating its origin as well. So that's what you're seeing happening right here. So here's the rotate. Pay attention to those numbers. It just goes from 0 to negative 720. The negative just means instead of going clockwise, it's going counterclockwise. But then here's where the origin rotates. So when I scrub the playhead, if you look over here, you'll see it going from 50, 50, which means right in the middle, to changing numbers. And don't worry about trying to make this look exactly like mine. Just have some fun with it, because the idea here is that it's supposed to be kind of a quirky thing. And then that goes away and you're at the end. And this is exactly the stuff we'll be focusing on next. Now, you're not finished yet. You're finished with what we've been referring to as section 2. So now what does that mean? How do we get to section 1 from here? So we have all that we did at the very beginning. I'm just going to slide this slider all the way over, put my playhead at the beginning. We have 1 second of that showing up, 1 second of it disappearing, and then we started this section. So we need to add some time over here. Let me show you in my finished version what you're shooting for, and then I'll show you how to get there. So we now want the animation that shows the opacity starting at 9 seconds. Now I'm back in the file that represents your finished section 2, where the opacity animation comes in at 2 seconds. I'm going to now insert the additional 7 seconds that I need. So I am at 1 second. I'm going to go to timeline, insert time, and what I'm looking for is 7 seconds. So there's my minutes, my seconds, and my fractions of seconds. So I'm going to go right there, which is 7 seconds. Click on insert time, scrub the playhead to verify that that worked. So now this is going to show up for 7, total 8 seconds. Disappear for 1, and then our animation starts. Sometimes it's weird, you lose the, after you insert time, it seems like things broke, but all you have to do, unfortunately, is save, close, and then reopen. And